Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Human First, the official Roadmap Writers podcast. I'm Gabriel Tice, Roadmap's Director of Digital Marketing and Brand Management.
I'm JT Cruz, writer, producer, and head of Roadmap's TikTok account.
And I'm Nicole Betts, writer and Sprouts vitamin clerk.
You're not going to be the only Nicole on this episode, though.
I
We're going to be joined
know.
by another Nicole. We'll see how much confusion that causes. Today, we're joined by Niceole Levy, a television writer. So she's an alum of the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, NBC's Writers on the Verge program, and a bunch of other fellowships. Niceole has written on Ironside, Allegiance, The Mysteries of Laura, Shades of Blue, Cloak and Dagger, Fate the Winx Saga, making her the second Fate the Winx Saga alum that we've had on the show after Gregory Locklear, and S.W.A.T. She also co-wrote The Banker, which is available on Apple TV Plus. Finally, she's an author. She wrote The Writer's Room Survival Guide. So before we invite on our guest of honor, I wanted to ask our other Niceole, what are some survival guide tips that you have for the writer's room?
Oh, that's a good one. That is a really good question. I've had to learn two different sets, how to be an assistant in a room and then how to be a writer in a room. Um, I don't know. Should I just talk about the writer ones?
I think you should
Well,
do both because a
do
lot of
both.
writers end up
Yes,
writing as assistants. And if they don't get past the assistant part, they might not get to the writer part.
you're so right.
And
That's
there's
how
a
I
lot
started.
less grace for assistants. So I think
Yes.
people are going to need to
Facts.
know which minds to avoid even more.
Yes. Okay, so if you're an assistant, don't speak right away. They hired you to be an assistant first. So do your job, show them you're good. And it also depends on the showrunner too. Kind of take their temperature. How do they seem to feel about assistants pitching in the room? Some are like, do not do it, do your job. And some are like, I know you're here to be a writer. So, like Rabia, for example, was very like, I know no assistant wants to sit here and be an assistant for the rest of their lives. So she was very encouraging. Um, that being said, if you do get the go ahead to pitch, make sure what you're about to say is pretty stinking good. Make sure you're not just like talking just to be like, look, I can pitch. And I know that's hard. You never know how it's going to land. I've pitched jokes as an assistant that didn't land, and I wanted to die. So, but I've also pitched jokes that killed it. So um, just kind of calibrating that. That's the assistant thing, just knowing when to speak and also just really reading the room. As a writer, kind of similar. Like, don't just think you have to talk to fill up space, but also don't just sit there and not say anything. So, which can be a difficult line to walk. Um, let's see. I think. Oh, and pitch positive. If somebody pitches something you don't like, don't say that sucks, I hate it. Just be like, what if instead they did this, or another pitch. Like if always have a pitch loaded if you're gonna crap on somebody else's pitch.
Ooh, that's a nice piece of advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to get the advice that usually if a pitch doesn't land, it'll just die in the room. So like
Yeah.
no need to send it on its way on a sinking ship. Just let it the dust settle and then continue on.
I have not ever been a writer's room assistant, but I've been a production assistant. And
Mm,
um, staying invisible until you are needed and
yes.
being ready for that moment, I think that's going to apply to uh, assistant roles, assistant positions throughout the industry. And don't screw up the coffee order.
Oh yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but thankfully I just do features, so I haven't had to imagine what if I pitch something and it just flopped right there in the room.
yeah, it's not a great feeling.
But if you
But
want to prep for that, try doing stand up because
yeah,
stand up is basically just pitching jokes to an
yes,
audience.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that or improv.
Yeah,
Improv will really test your mettle when it comes to like pitching jokes.
on
And
the spot.
yeah,
Before we bring on our guest of honor, we're going to do a sponsorship break. Who is our sponsor, you ask? Well, you have not been paying attention because our sponsor is us. We'll be right back to chat with Niceole Levy. So stay tuned. Hi, everyone. If you're an author looking for more guidance in the publishing industry, Roadmap Writers has partnered with Avitas Creative Management.
We really wanted to bring both companies together to create an outlet for authors, to basically do what we do for screenwriters, but to do for authors, which is provide training services, to get amazing editors, agents, industry professionals, to teach classes, and to also, like Roadmap, provide a light at the end of the tunnel.
We're offering classes, consultations, and competitions with literary agents and publishers. So if you're ready to take the next leap as an author, then you can start signing up at the link below. So, Niceole, to start off, you're actually the second person we've talked to in a role who has a credit with Fate: The Winx Saga.
Yeah,
Yeah, do you know Gregory Locklear?
of course. Yes. No, we were in Ireland together in the trenches.
amazing. Yeah, he was literally our guest before you.
Oh, awesome. No, I love Greg.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Was that a fun shoot for you? He had some interesting stories.
I mean, it was fun. It was a steep learning curve, I think, because so much was different than how we shoot here in terms of the hours, the limitations, um, and just getting used to being in a place that's not home. Like
Mm.
you're working from a rental apartment, you're driving to a studio every day and like trying to get the lay of the land in a place that is not familiar to you, which can be a real challenge. Um, but we had a lot of fun. There was definitely days where we were all like, okay, I'm ready to go home now. But it was an interesting experience to go through. And I will say it paid huge dividends to me. And I just mentioned this in another interview, but because we worked French hours on that show, we worked, 10 hours where you take lunch while you're working. And then my very next job was on S.W.A.T during lockdown. So we were working similar situation and I was like, oh yeah, that's no problem. And so many people were like, what are we doing? And I'm like, guys, it works. I promise it works.
Do you prefer shoots where you have to travel, or do you prefer working at home, working from the comfort of Los Angeles?
Oh, I mean, if I could get another show here in LA, I would consider that a jackpot. There's so many great people all over. So, I always find like people I love in whatever remote location I have to go to, but there's nothing like being able to sleep in your own bed for the 4 hours you're going to get to sleep.
Exactly.
And I was lucky. My very first show was here in LA, and literally like on the Universal lot across the street from my writer's room. So
Wow.
like I could walk over whenever I wanted to, which is almost unheard of now. And then SWAT was here, so I got to, produce local and come home and sleep in my own bed, which was nice.
But you said that was during COVID.
Yeah, yeah. So we were um shooting fewer hours, fewer setups. We really weren't shooting at night. Um, we actually changed our shoot days from Monday, Friday to Tuesday, Saturday, because in order to shoot downtown, which was such a signature of our show, like you had to shoot on a Saturday or a Sunday because the city was like, no.
Yeah.
So Sean did such a good job of managing that for us. And then that season also became very challenging because, of course, it was the season where George Floyd was murdered. And so we were so fortunate to have Aaron Rashawn Thomas leading us there. And we had, that was already in the DNA of our show, is dealing with what race means in policing. So It wasn't like we were trying to jump into water we didn't know, but you know, we had a lot of conversations about how to proceed through that. So I felt very lucky to be to have leadership that was really invested in taking care of everybody as well as they could.
What different muscles do you have to use in order to create work on a show that, like SWAT, that's very grounded and real, then versus like Winx that is like more fantastical and sort of more fun? Like, are there certain ways that you maneuver that storytelling versus others?
That's actually a great question. I think, you know, as you know so well, I mentor a lot. And I will very often have writers saying to me, well, like, I don't know, my reps want me to write a procedural sample and I'm just not a procedural person. And I'm like, can you write a story that moves from A to B to C to D and produces a result? Because that's literally all it is, right?
Yeah.
We start here, here's the steps we take to get here. That's really it. And I think people psych themselves out about what that is if it's not their world. And I think the truth of the matter is, if you can write procedural television, you can write literally anything because you understand how to build a succession of clues or a succession of information to get the audience to a reveal that's going to be satisfying. That's the whole job in procedural television, right? Is there's a mystery, we got to solve it, and it needs to be satisfying. Whether it's a cop mystery, a medical mystery, are we going to get this guy off on a legal show, whatever it is, right? It's like we got to get there. And so I think building that muscle has served me so well because as I moved into genre space, which I loved, it's the same thing. It's just a different world that you're doing it in, right? Like in Fate, we're building to like, what's the mystery behind Bloom's secret, and like, where'd she come from? Well, okay, this is where we're starting. This is where we're going to end our season. What are the things we need to be sure the audience finds out? And then how do we get to those things, right? That's what we're plotting. And then the thing that's great about working in that space is then you don't have to be bound by the rules of the world, right? Of like our actual real day-to-day world. You can be like, and what if they open the door and suddenly there's a dragon? Like it's just, you can make up whatever you want because it's not anchored in our world. And that's such a great, fun thing to play with. Like I'm actually writing a spec feature right now that has a very grounded genre element in it, but it's like I get to take stuff that's real in our world and like magnify it by like 500, and it's just cracking me up because I'm just so amused by it, right? But it's all on the service of building to that satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
So when you're working on a police procedural, how much homework and research goes into adhering strictly to the actual legal system, how the legal system really works?
I mean, that's really showrunner dependent. Like, there are showrunners who want to know everything about how it really works, knowing that we're going to cheat stuff, right? Because we got 42 minutes and not, you know, 3 months to like go through an investigation if you're lucky. But, um, and some showrunners are like, I just don't care. Like, we're just going to do whatever works for our show, right? And if you're on that show and you're an expert in that, you kind of have to just accept that we're not going to really care about the rules until someone wants to know something specific, right? I am a person that folks look to as an expert in that because I worked in law enforcement and I have family in law enforcement. But every police department is different. Like you can't just generally be like, well, the LAPD does this, so that's what everyone does. Nope. Like the LAPD is such a unique and like sort of foundational police department in how policing has changed in America, right? So it's sort of like you can't really, it's sometimes apples and oranges if you're trying to compare. And so I still do research. Like when I was on Cloak and Dagger, I went and dug up the New Orleans Police Department procedure manual because how they conduct a certain thing might not be the way that we would do it here in LA, right? So it's like it's good to know. Again, it doesn't mean we're going to do it exactly that way. But if you can say like, hey, actually, they have a rule that like detectives never write alone, or it's totally fine for detectives to write alone. Like then you can say if someone were to beef it, you can be like, nope, nope, see right there, it's right there. Um, but it is very showrunner dependent, and sometimes it's show dependent, right? If you're doing a much more sort of bread and butter cop investigative show, there's generally, I would say generally, a little bit more investment in it feeling real, versus something that's a little more light or um, skewed to like be more entertaining and less. We care about this case. That's more, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Cloak and Dagger. And I think Cloak and Dagger was actually such a great intersection for your skills, right? From, being on a hard cop show, being on the Winx, fantastical show, and then this show is sort of like an amalgamation of that. How much research did you do, or how familiar were you to the property of Cloak and Dagger when you started on that show?
I read everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I knew that they had been trying to do that for a minute as a property, so I had, already sort of read the comics and seen and definitely saw what the problems were in trying to adapt it, right? It is very much a comic of its time when you're looking at the original runs. And there were definitely some, some racial things that needed to be developed further. And I thought Joe did an amazing job with that, and Joe Pekaski, who is our showrunner. And then he moved the show to New Orleans, and that is where my mother's family is from. So it's a place, a city that I love dearly, that I'm so familiar with. And it was so exciting to me to get to go tell a story in that city that was with these superhero characters that I, was falling in love with, and really get to like use the history of the city, because as we often referred to it, because we kept saying it in the room, New Orleans is the city that will not die. It refuses. The world keeps trying to kill it, and New Orleans is like, nope, not going.
I loved how you treated the spirituality of the city, and the portrayal of like the magic that place holds. Because most shows will fall into the voodoo, satanic, evil, and this was really sort of taking that and just elevating it to like, no, this is spirituality, this is African spirituality, this is history, this is where we sort of come from. And I love that was touched upon in that show.
Yeah, it was really important to Joe that we not fall into those cliches, and everybody in the writers' room really did a lot of work of, researching things, and we had a writer in the room who really introduced us to some concepts that even I wasn't familiar with, and so it turned out to be such a great group effort, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
Well, I'm trying to form this concise question in my head, but it's like one of my biggest regrets is being like 18, I want to be a TV writer, studying writing in college, doing the assistant, and then being like, I don't feel like I have any real world experience with anything to write about. Whereas, you were saying you started in law enforcement and stuff. And, yeah, I know a lot of TV writers used to be lawyers or things like this, like just the important of real world experience. And then now you're in the room and people are like leaning on you for it,
Hmm.
basically. Just, I don't know, something very cool about that seems helpful for
Yeah,
people.
yeah, I think it very much is, and I definitely have some friends who did like a more direct, film school into the pipeline sort of journey, but they all have really interesting things about their lives that happened to them on the way. And I think one of the things that my mentors early really stressed is just like live your life. Like that's what you're going to write about, even if you're not writing about it in terms of yourself, right? And like one of my favorite stories was about Phil Rosenthal sending the Everybody Loves Raymond writers home. And it was like, go home, eat dinner with your kids, fight with your wife, come in, tell me about it. Like, that's right. That's the bread and butter of everything we do. It's if you're writing a romantic thriller, you have to have some idea of what romance feels like, right? To go in and be able to like, okay, and now this is when it goes bad. Like whatever it is, I think sometimes people get so caught up in I got to get in it and like only do this and it's really easy. I mean, when I first started out, I think I said no to a lot of things, no to a lot of like going to concerts or going to movies or doing, because I was so busy. And my mentors very quickly were like, no, you're not that busy. You need to give yourself permission to have your life. And the more I have done that, the more my sanity has remained stable, and I think it's an important thing I talk to with emerging writers now. It's just you have to go to your friend's wedding, even if it's out of town, and even if you're on script. Go to your friend's wedding. You can write in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Go to the wedding, have a drink at the reception, get some food, come home, write some more. Like it's just you can't miss out on life because you're trying to make your dream come true.
So you've brought up mentorships a few times that you mentor writers, the mentors that you've had. How do those relationships form from the perspective of emerging writers who are seeking mentorships?
I mean, they kind of can come from anywhere and so much of it is just I think one of the really key things, like because we talk a lot in our business about networking, right? Building your network and making your connections and doing all that. But I don't think we talk enough about like forming real relationships with people and what that means. And so I will tell you, like, my first real mentor in this business was this amazing writer named Joyce Burdett. She had literally done everything. She had been a TV executive. She wrote TV movies. She wrote a very amazing novel about her history with alcoholism called The Cracker Factory that was turned into a movie. And she had created TV. And she is also the mother of Jack Burdett, who is one of my favorite comedy writers. And I met her literally in my life. Like I do Pilates and I was finishing my master's thesis. So I was working at the Pilates studio to just kind of like have part-time income while I was finally, for the first time ever in my college life, not working 40 plus hours a week. And she was a client there. And we just like struck up a conversation and I knew who she was, but I was like, I'm not going to bring that into this. Like I'm work here. She's a client. I'm just going to talk with her. And then one day we were at a social function together and she heard me talking about TV writing and stuff. And she was like, hey, send me something to read. And I was like, okay, sure. And I did. And she responded to it. And because we had already kind of been building a relationship, she just jumped in then as a professional mentor as well. And like really tried very hard to like help me get represented and to get into rooms to meet people. And when I was a finalist for the CBS writers mentoring program, now the Paramount writers mentoring program, she wrote a recommendation for me. When I like called her and left her a voicemail saying like, "Oh my God, I'm a finalist," she actually emailed them,
Oh,
to say like, basically, you'd be crazy if you don't take her. And that was like huge for me because it was just someone I knew was successful at it, rooting for me at all times, right? Just checking in, how you doing? What'd you write? What's going on? And part of building that relationship was me staying in touch with her, right? Me being like, oh my God, I saw Jack has a show. That's awesome. And like just continuing to treat her as a person I liked and admired. And I think sometimes what happens is people get so like, well, but that's like a showrunner and they can give me recommendations and they stop treating the person as a person.
yeah.
And they're like it all becomes asks and not just, hey, you crossed my mind today and I just wanted to see how things are going.
Hey, this is the Human First podcast, so this is exactly what we try to reinforce throughout everything else we teach at Roadmap. And I think something I love to return to is the fact that this is, I think, a real universal truth of life, of just growth in your personal and professional lives. I mean, are there any, would you say, actionable steps that writers in general can take in maintaining those relationships in inauthentic ways, not inauthentic, in space, authentic
Right.
ways?
In authentic ways. Yeah,
It's being
absolutely.
totally non-authentic. That's how do
Make it till you
how
make
do I
it.
pretend that I'm
How
authentic?
do I pretend? Right. Well, and I think the thing is, right, we all feel that when someone's like not really, it doesn't feel genuine, right? And like, I just look, I describe myself all the time as a room mom. Like, that is the energy I bring. So, like, once I meet you and I like you, like, I'm generally invested in like hoping you're doing well. So, my whole life, like trying to break into this business through now is, you know, oh my God, so and so just came in my mind today. Like, I wonder how they're doing. And I'll just shoot them a text or an email, whichever contact I have, or if I follow them on socials and, they post something fun from their life or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so great to see you having fun. Right. And just stay in touch with that person, however, whatever access you have. If people offer to stay in touch with you and give you an email or a phone, like, that's real. We don't offer it if we're not willing to do it, right? And so, but people have to do it and not just hold that email for 2 years until they need something,
Yeah.
right? Which I think some people do. And I don't know if it's nerves about, I don't want to be a pain. Well, if you're just shooting me an email because you heard I'm working on a show that you love, and you're just like, oh my God, I love that show. I'm so excited you're on it. Like, that's it. That's all you're sending. And when I have time, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you watch it, and reply. And like, there might not be a lot to the exchange, but it means that you're looking at me as a person who has a life that isn't just there to do stuff for you.
That it's not just
Yeah, I'll definitely
transactional.
tell you. I'll definitely tell you what it is because I've run into this myself where it's A, I don't want to be a pain to this person because I know that they're busy. And B, if if I don't have a lot of things going on in my life, then I feel um like I don't have any updates. Like I feel like I'm not I haven't elevated myself to get close to that level. So it's like I don't have any business contacting this person because I'm not on the same level as they are. Like so it's like you almost like you don't give yourself permission to actually be friendly because you feel yourself like you have nothing to offer. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect can come in when trying to like maintain those relationships.
Yeah, well,
Now,
I
I
think
get that.
yeah, and I think a lot of people just do have this innate fear of being a nuisance uh when they're at the bottom of a power dynamic, or when there's a gap in experience, a gap in where people's careers are at. I think I'm just very self-conscious of the optics. I mean, how do I communicate to you that this is a genuine reach out
An
without
inauthentic reach out.
without overcorrecting it? Because, when you overcorrect the tone of that, it makes it even more
Yes.
suspicious, right?
Yeah. No, I really think it's just about like, it's it's about it being genuine. It's about me reading in Deadline that
Mhm.
Alexi is making his new pilot, right? Alexi Holly. And like me just shooting him a text or an email being like, oh my God, I'm so happy they finally ordered your pilot. Have fun.
So paying
Right?
attention
Like,
to the trades, that's a big practical
that's
thing for people to
definitely
do,
a
right?
big part of it. And look, like, I mean, I've worked with like Alexi and I have a relationship. So it's not like, that's someone I only sort of know. But it's still like I love to celebrate the people that I know. So if something good happens for them, I just want to be like, "Oh my God, I can't wait. That's so great." Or, if something bad happens, sometimes like you'll read that like a new showrunner is being brought in on something your friend was working on, and you just be like, hey, I'm thinking about you. I hope everything's okay. Sometimes you never get a response to those because people are in it, right? And they're dealing with it, but they'll remember that you thought about them. And so my whole thing is like, if I genuinely have thought of that person, or I read good news about them and I'm really happy for them, or I'm really bummed for them because of something, there's nothing like, that's all I have to say, right? I'm not, it's about fostering the idea that I think of you without an ask attached.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because what'll happen sometimes is like someone will see your name attached to something or they'll hear you're on a show and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like, that's so cool for you. Hey, I was going to ask, can you, right? And it's like, even if it's not related to like trying to staff you on the show or anything, it's just like, then it feels like you're using their good news to get in, right? To like get in somehow. But if you're the kind of person who just stays in touch genuinely, then when you have to make an ask, it doesn't feel like, oh, okay, like another person asking me for something. It's just like, oh, that's a cool person. Sure, I can do that for you. It's really just that. And I get that it's not natural for some people. And I think that's kind of how I was raised. So that's sort of my personality. But it's simple as this every year, and it's gotten harder because post 2020 and with COVID and everybody going home to work and then all the contraction, we just lose track of people in the business, right? It's hard to know who's at what place and the emails change and all that. But for the people I can find who I have met over the years, and I talk about this a lot, I send Christmas cards.
Mm.
And if I have your email, but I can't figure out where to mail the card to, I just email you. I scan the card and I have a little PDF of it and I email it.
Oh.
And it's like, it's just like, I think of you as a person and it's the holidays and have a great holiday. Right. And that's genuine. Like I like to do it. So it's not like I do it hoping to get something out of it, but I have found that it usually elicits responses of, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. Like we should have lunch or we should do whatever, right? And again, it's just that two executives, two people who talk to how many writers, all the time and maybe never hear from those writers again. A reminder of like, hey, somebody actually like remembers who I am and what I do and that like wished me a happy holiday. And so I think it's looking for whatever that is for you, right? Each person that might be different, but like what's your way of just being in community with your contacts, right? They're not just contacts. You need to build a community. Like there was a point in time where 4 or 5 of my friends who were much higher level than I was were reaching out to me constantly, being like, hey, do you know a writer who's good at this? Do you know this? Whatever, because they knew I knew so many people. And it's because I do this. It's because I genuinely check in with people and genuinely try to keep those relationships building.
Do you have, I'm sure this comes natural to you, but for people that it does not come natural for, do you have a method of time for when you tend to reach out to somebody? Like, is it once a year? Is it twice a year, 3 times, depending on how much you know them?
Yeah, it depends on the person. Like, I think, there's people who, like, I'm not necessarily even reaching out to every year beyond the Christmas card, but like, they know they're going to get the card, right? Like, I remember one time somebody was like, I was late, and they were like, where's my card? I was like, it's coming. I was late. I'm sorry. I was like, everything's crazy. Um, because, I put cute bulldogs on my Christmas card because that's my jam. And so people are like, well, where's my dog picture? Right? They look forward to it. Um, People that I am in closer contact to or who I've had a real, genuine interaction with in my career, a couple of times a year, probably, whether it's just a fun, you know, I mean, again, I'm going to bring up Alexi again, but like I was rewatching a show Body of Proof that was on ABC years ago. And the third season of that show was like they finally figured out what that show was, and then it got canceled. And I was rewatching it because I was like, God, this season is so good. And Alexi's name came up in the credits, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot you worked on this. I was like, that season's so good. I'm so bummed they canceled it. Right? Like it genuinely delighted me to see his name. And so I, would reach out. But it really just it's your relationships, right? They're your relationships. And so you kind of have to decide that for yourself. Like I think saying like you should reach out twice a year, like then it can start to feel rote and it can, whatever. It's just what inspires you to want to reach out to that person.
Yeah.
And that's really the gut check for me. Like if it feels real, then I'm going to do it. And I may not get an answer back, right? Sometimes people are real busy. And sometimes like 8 months later, I get a like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was in the middle of like Serbia shooting a television show. And I was just like, Niceole emailed me and I just didn't get to it. I'm so sorry. Right? Like that's what happens. And you're just like, cool, like how's everything going? You okay? Like and I think that's a really important part too, is like not taking it personal, right? When someone doesn't get back to you,
That might be the
doesn't mean
hardest
that,
part.
and it is, but like I have friends who don't respond to my messages because they're in the middle of something and they lose track of it, whatever. And then suddenly they're like, oh my God, did you text me like 2 weeks ago about getting together? And I was like, yeah, I figured you were busy. It's cool. Like because I do it. Like I try so hard not to, but like, I mean, let's think about how long it took us to schedule this, right? Because I was like, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And then suddenly months went by.
We've
It's
had
not,
Yeah,
crazier there have
yeah,
been
there was
crazier
a
times.
yeah, it went beyond that actually. Gabe, I didn't tell you because like I had reached out to Niceole and she's like, well, I don't want to have to keep, it was the same thing. Like, I don't have to keep talking about the same thing over and over again about breaking in. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, well, we don't have to do that. We can talk about anything else. And then she's like, let me think about it. And then
Mm.
like months had gone by. I had honestly thought she was just like, podcast, schmodcast. And then and literally like maybe 3 or 4 months later, she's like, I know what I want to talk about. I'm like, okay, great. Let's
Wow.
do it.
Awesome.
yeah. And it was
Well,
a real genuine, like, I did lose track of it for a minute. And then when I was like, oh my God, I never responded. And then I was like, okay, but no, like, what do you want to talk about before you respond? Like, and now that you've made them wait so long, like, what is it going to be, if you're
Yeah,
going to do it? But
yeah.
it better be amazing.
Well, well, on that note, about breaking in. No. Uh, so I wanted to present a scenario that this conversation has made me think of. And writers ask us at Roadmap about this kind of scenario all the time. A writer had the best meeting with an exec, the best general, or somebody read their script and gave them, the most glowing feedback. It just seems like love at first sight. And then silence.
mhm.
The writer does not hear from that exec. They wait the appropriate amount of time. I suggest waiting 5 weeks before following up. And then if you don't hear back, well, I wanted to ask you about maintaining relationships and all of that. Do you have any advice for a writer in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, if I feel like I really got along with an executive, and like there are executives I met with when I was a baby writer that I am now like friends with, like genuinely, partly because I was like, man, that person's real cool. And so even if, they weren't able to get me into the staffing loop or do any of that stuff, like I always send, a thank you email of like, thanks for your time and, all that stuff. And then um I mean, at least like back in the day, so many meetings now are like more, development stuff, and that's a different bailiwick in those terms. But when you're like building your, you know, current and executives of like where you might get staffed, just that like, hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. It was so fun chatting with you, and like if there's something specific, like, when the season premiere of Blah de Blah airs, like, I'll definitely like want to hear what you thought, or, whatever. And if it was a show you talked about and you both love. And then if there's nothing, like, you've given yourself away to come back, right? And be like, hey, you're super busy, but I didn't forget. And such came back. And like, what did you think of the premiere? Did you get to watch it yet? And then, like, I built an entire relationship with an executive like that, right? Again, treating them as a person and not just as a person who can get you a job or get you a meeting or do that. It's looking for those things that you have in common as people and using those to return and touch base.
So do you just so say you send a script and they don't really respond to it, but you want to keep the relationship going. Do you just not address the script anymore, or do you not check in about it, or do you just sort of move the subject onto something else?
I mean, send a script like they asked to read you
Yeah, like
and you sent
they ask that
something.
you send something, and then 2 months go by, 3 months go by, you assume it's just like a Hollywood no, like they
Hmm.
don't respond, so they're not really interested in either producing it, repping you, how it is, but you still want to maintain that relationship. So how do you sort of maneuver past the hey, checking in, are you reading my script, to hey, let's be friendly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's again, right? It's about like what is the human connection that you've built with that person, right? Like I've definitely had that where someone's like super excited about something and then all that excitement disappears, right? But I'll be reading a book or doing something and it makes me think of that person in a way that's like, oh my God, so and so would die over this. Like they were talking about wanting something like this. And I'll just be like, hey, if you're still looking for something about XYZ, I just read this book and it made me think of you. Right. And it's just to like, oh my God, that's so great. And maybe that makes them realize they never responded to your scripts. Like you half the time it's they just didn't even get to reading it, right? Because too many things, too much work, whatever. But maybe that makes them read it, or maybe that just then when you finally meet up they're like, hey man, I'm so sorry that like I never got back to you, and you're like, cool, that's fine, like everybody's busy and you just move on. Like I just had that happen to me in a development situation and it was just like, it's all good, like nobody promised that you were going to do anything, and like let's chat, let's talk, what's next, right? Because the same people like keep circling in your life, right? Like that's part of it. Like look, there's going to be people you just genuinely don't like, and that's
Mhm.
real. Like that's just life. And so you're not going to extend yourself necessarily beyond the professional with them. But when you meet someone that you think is cool or someone that you might want to work with, like everybody moves all over the place, although there's only going to be like three places to work
Yeah.
ever in the world soon. But
It's so
but
so crazy.
Yeah,
and
we
so
were going to
crazy.
introduce a segment in this show called Apocalypse Watch. We decided against that at the last minute, but yeah, the latest news. I don't know when this episode is coming out, so don't know how much we want to date it, but there's
Yeah.
been news of an acquisition
Yes.
by some
Yes.
powerful interests. So
Yeah, I'm actually hoping the antitrust laws kick in and stop that from happening.
those laws have to be enforced.
True.
Yeah,
Yes. But
tricky
yeah, but I
thing.
think it's, again, like I wish there were hard and fast rules that I could just be like, you should do it now or you should do whatever, but it's all by feel. It's all, and sometimes like you'll be in really good touch with someone and then they just drop off your radar for whatever reason. And then 3 years later, like you'll be at a mixer, or you're going into a meeting and their name's on the thing. And you're like, hey. And they're like, oh my God, how have you been? Right. And it's just like, it's fine because they got busy or they changed jobs or something happened, but they're going to have like a good memory of you because you were a person they stayed in touch with, usually. Right. So it's, there's nothing foolproof about it. And I would say, as long as you're keeping that idea of like a real person, because right now, like as far as I can tell, our business has never been harder. Like I've talked to people who have been in this business for 25, 30 years. I'm not sure it's ever been harder. And like there are upper level writers who can't get read without recommendations, right? Like I get it. But also you can't keep going to the same person asking them for recommendations all the time. So you have to be building this group of people who know you and know your work and can, vouch for you so that you can sort of evaluate like, oh no, I've gone to Niceole like too many times. Like, let me go here, let me pivot. But then if it's a real direct connection to me, right? You can acknowledge, you can be like, Niceole, I'm so sorry. I hate to ask you this again, but like, I'm up for this thing and like, this person, like, would you mind one more time? Right? Just sort of even acknowledging that goes so far to, right, I get it. Okay, sure. Let me shoot an email over. Um, because it does like we want to help everybody. I think all the writers I know are very invested in that, but you do just at a certain point feel like people who don't do the good stay in touch keep coming back to you to ask those asks, and you're just like, y'all,
Yeah.
you've heard me talk about this.
Yeah, and I think it's also helpful to know that the majority of people, and I mean this in the nicest way, is can't get you a job. Like
Right.
it really is about timing, but like you said, maintaining that connection, maybe your timing and luck will collide, but the majority of people don't really have the power to use a job or,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like you said.
I kind of wanted to just shift this slightly to talk about relationships with reps, if you have any tips on that. Um, like I know some people just sort of just wait for the reps to call. Some people want to have like a standing meeting like every week to kind of update it. Like where's what's your mindset with maintaining that relationship?
Um, I will say like it's shifted a little bit just in the current climate, right? Of me feeling like I'm gone back to being proactive in a way that I didn't have to be for a while. Um, and by that I mean like I did a new list of like, hey, just to make it easy for everybody, here's like all the showrunner level people and like upper level writers I know who are developing so that if you see their name attached to a like maybe get a green light, like you just are like, oh, that's somebody Niceole knows, right? So trying to give them that shorthand, like when we're all starting out, there's a lot of like, hey, I actually know someone who can recommend me for this. I think this script would be good. And you're like trying to like help shuffle through the clutter because certainly when I broke in, like staffing season was just insanity. And so anything you could do to help push you through, right? Well, now staffing's all the time. So if you hear like that there's a chance, like you're talking to an exec who knows an exec at, and they're like, oh, yeah, I think they're about to pick up this XYZ show by so and so. And you're like, oh my God, like I know that person. Like you can say to your reps, like, hey, I heard that outlet's about to pick up the show. I know that showrunner, they actually like have been in a room with me when we were both sort of, they were still above me, but I was a lower level. Like they know my work and stuff if you want to reach out and see if they need someone my level. So like trying to help in that way now. Um, I definitely don't need to talk to my reps every week. Like I'm definitely not that person. I mean, we talk as we need to, right? I know that they are constantly looking for stuff for me. And as I sort of come up with things that I'm interested in doing, if I need their help, I don't hesitate. Like if I'm like, hey, can you see if these book rights are available or, whatever, and throw that off to them. Um, but my reps also know that I am always, always generating new material for them in whatever form that takes. If I'm writing a pitch that I'm just going to spring on them, if I'm writing a feature that my feature agent is like, ma'am, could you please send me a new sample? Which I did in late 2025. So I finally did that. But like it's like I'm always working. So they know that at some point I'm going to be like, hey, here's the thing I'm working on. Like do you know anybody who might be looking for this? Do you think I need to make it more streaming, more broadcast, like, whatever. Um, but I think just remembering right now, like all of this is also all shifted for our reps,
Mhm.
right? The entire business landscape has also shifted for them. And in the contraction way, in the who's being able to sell shows way, right? We all know that that's changed very rapidly of who's getting green lights and who isn't, and those kind of things. And that because we went through the whole agency action and all that stuff, like there used to be like, well, this show's a package. So of course they're going to hire, a bunch of WME writers or a bunch of UTA writers to do whatever. Well, now that doesn't exist anymore. So it's there's a lot of hustle to it now that like wasn't necessarily there because there were so many shows and everybody was looking for us. And if you were already in, like it was just sort of constant of like, would you be interested in this? Because I'll put you up on, well, I'm not done with this, until whatever. And then that just stopped because Hollywood went like this. So, and shrunk in on itself. And so they're all getting used to this too. And so I do tell people to like give them a little grace. Like I talk to a lot of people, especially mid and lower level writers who are so frustrated with their reps. And I'm like, look, some of that frustration is very justified, but also like sometimes they really just can't get you meetings. They just can't. They're trying and they can't. And what can you like, can you find a strategy that'll help with that, right? And so again, if are you struck up a relationship with someone and you follow them on socials and you see that they're posting about their bestie who works at, they work at Netflix, but their bestie works at Amazon and there's a show you'd be perfect for at Amazon. You have a relationship with this person. Can you write to them and be like, hey, like, is there any chance you'd be willing to introduce me to your friend over at Amazon? Like, I just, I feel like I'm a really good fit for what they do. And, you know, I know not, it might not be immediate, but if you ever thought that would be cool, right? Because you have a relationship with this person. So it's just, it's,
Can
I don't,
you, I'm sorry, can you expand on that? So it's like introductions, how? Like, do you like want to grab a coffee with this person? Like,
yeah. So that's a really important thing to talk about is like what's the initial ask, right? Like a lot of people want to start with, will you read me? That is oftentimes too big an ask. I have multiple times reached out to executives that I have relationships with and said, hey, I know you might not have time right now. Like I know XYZ writer who I think writes a lot of stuff in the wheelhouse of your outlet. And, if you would be interested in reading them, like I'm happy to do an introduction or meet with them, whatever you want to do. And they'll be like, okay, great. Like, email us, introduce us, and, I'll follow up on it. And very often that is just a Zoom or a coffee or whatever. Sometimes it's also like they do that and then they're like, okay, like you sent me a sample, right? And they'll read it. And sometimes it's a full like read and they get a general out of it, right? It kind of just depends on the person. But if you ask someone like, hey, like, would you, if it's the direct and you're especially trying to start that relationship, right? Would you have time to do like a quick Zoom or a coffee one day? Just so I could like pick your brain about, the business and what's going on and, you know, what my next steps might be, right? Most people are going to say yes to that. That's a pretty easy ask to do. And it's especially easy now that we have Zoom that someone could be like, well, I won't really have time to meet up, but we can hop on Zoom for, you know, a few minutes. And most of the time that turns into a longer conversation than expected, right? Because people are just engaged. And um, that can often be the thing that starts communication, right? And lets you sort of do that. I have had people reach out to me and say, hey, Niceole, like I have a support staffer on my show who I think could really benefit from a brief conversation with you about like how to be in the room and succeed and stuff, would you be willing to do that? If it's a person I know and it's like someone on their staff that they really believe in, like I'm going to say yes to that, right? And what I will usually say after those coffees or Zooms is stay in touch with me. Whether they do or not is on them, right? If they stay in touch, if they're like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, like this is literally, this is how real this is. My dog sitter happened to know a writer that I mentored through the Writers Guild Veterans Program. And they both jointly recommended a writer to me who was going through the program. He was my dog sitter's neighbor, and then he knew my former mentee through the program. And they were like, would you just meet with, this writer? And he's more interested in being a novelist necessarily than being a screenwriter. But I was like, sure, like, especially veteran. I come from a military family, so sure. And we had coffee, and I very much was like, stay in touch. And he's reached out to me numerous times to be like, hey, I like you talked to me about having a great bio, and I did a draft of a bio. Would you be willing to look at it? Sure, it's a bio. It's this big. Like, of course I can do that, right? And give you some tweaks and you can do it. He checks in with me very periodically to just be like, hey, I just wanted to share some good news with you. I'm doing a staged reading of my play or doing whatever. I got a contract for my book, which is great. Like, I'm so glad to hear good news. That's awesome. And like that relationship is there. So even though we don't talk often, if that writer were to write me today and say, I know this is crazy, but like I'm gonna go in a development meeting at Netflix. Like, do you know anybody there? Like, I could say yes, and I could be like, is this person on your list? If not, like, here's what I can tell you generally about a development meeting at Netflix, right? Because that back and forth has been happening. So I think starting with the small ask is really important. I had someone in my sphere who I met through the CBS program, who I ran into socially all the time and was very supportive and always cheering for me. And, we were in constant communication in like a friendly chat, and I never asked for anything. And then I went out for staffing my first year out of the NBC program. So I did the CBS and then NBC. Went out for staffing, didn't get the jobs. And I was so sad. And I was like, let me write a new pilot. So I'm working on my new pilot. And I knew it was close to being what I was wanting it to be, but I couldn't quite get it there. And I got so in my head about it. And I just thought, I need someone who's just going to be brutally honest with me about what's not working. And so I wrote this writer and I was just like, hey, like, I hate to ask you this, but could you read this pilot? Like, here's the problem. And he was like, okay, send it to me. And he wrote me back, and he didn't so much give me notes as he said, like, the tone is kind of all over the place. And like, watch something that has the tone you want and then come back and do a draft. And that's what I did. And that pilot got me my first two jobs.
Oh, nice.
Right. But I knew this person for 2 solid years before I ever asked anything of them. And it was more like checking in, haha, you're funny. Like, I saw this and I thought of you today. Like, one of the showrunners I know is obsessed with otters. And like once a year, I see the most hilarious otter thing, and I'm just like, thought of you and send it. Right. Like, it's so random. And like, but I ran into that showrunner in the real world the other day, and it was just like, oh my God, how are you? Right. And it's like that relationship has stayed, even though we had not seen each other in person in 4 or 5 years, probably.
By the way, if you're looking to be in Joey Tuccio's good graces, the CEO of Roadmap, dogs. His otters is dogs.
His otters, his dogs.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I know we're coming up on your time, so I want to ask the final question that we ask all of our guests. What's the film or TV show that made you want to be a screenwriter, a storyteller?
Um, I don't know that I can say it made me want to be a writer, but it's the show that told me what kind of writer I wanted to be. once I knew that I wanted to do it. And it is, uh, in my opinion, not arguably the greatest show in the history of television, and that is Hill Street Blues.
Oh yeah.
Um, and whenever people try to be like, no, but I'm like, that show exists because of Hill Street Blues. Like if Stephen Bochco had not gone back to his office and rebroken that pilot and put that show on the air, there is no guarantee that every other show you would argue with me would exist.
True.
And
Yeah.
so,
The Wire would not exist.
yes.
Yeah.
And like there are so many shows I love, like, I mean, I love NYPD Blue, I love Homicide, The Americans, like Friday Night Lights, like so many things. But that show never left me because I was very young when that show was on, but I watched it and I always remembered how it made me feel. And when I was like, okay, TV's the thing, like in my mind, like that was the goal. Not that I'm there even now, but like that's the goal. Like write something that's going to stay with a person for decades.
That's a
And
great
so, yeah.
answer. That's a great answer.
Mhm.
All right, well, is there any way that our listeners can connect with you on social media or anywhere they can sort of follow your career for updates?
My exploits, yeah, on Instagram and now also Threads, which hasn't gotten ruined so far. Uh, the same handle, it is my first name, so it's at Niceole Cookies because I used to own a baking business. It's a long story, but that's how I ended up on social media in the first place, and I just kept the handle. So.
We're on Threads too, by the way. I don't know how many people know this, but Roadmap Writers is on Threads. So if you're one of the like 40 people who actively uses Threads, make sure to give us a follow.
So there's like a whole like screenwriting community building on Threads now.
That makes
Like
sense.
it's been really like people leaving the other platforms and like coming over and like there's a real sense of finding some community there, which it feels like the other place before it got bad. So like we're all
The bad
enjoying it.
place.
The bad place. And
Well, that's the same thing with Blue Sky. Even though it's not anywhere near as big as the platform that shall not be named, our engagement there is very similar because it's really concentrated into people who are actively looking for community.
Yeah, there's a
mhm.
robust like blue sky like screenwriting community, and I also
Yeah,
want I also want to shout out Niceole Levy's book,
thank
the
you.
the Writer's Room Survival Guide. Make sure everybody go and pick that up if you really want to get into the brain of Niceole and understand what it's like to be a writer in the room. It is a great read, and I'm gonna have to like meet up with you and get this signed.
I would love to do that for you. Yeah. And like that book is literally because there's like little stories that are anonymous throughout of like other writers' experience because no one answers the right answer, right? For the stuff you go through in the room. And my community was so generous in doing that. And it was just like we all needed this when we were trying to come in. So it has turned into the book I wish I had had when I started out. And so I'm grateful to hear that it's been helpful to people.
We'll make sure to add a link to your book in the description for the episode.
Okay, awesome.
Definitely.
And you can link it either at the original publisher, which is mwp.com, or at bookshop.org, because I try not to send people to the other
The
place.
other bad place.
So many bad places.
So
Too many
many
bad
bad,
places to
So
count.
many.
so many
All right.
bad places.
Well,
But yeah,
it's
but you
not a
guys
bad.
should. Sorry, I was just going to say you guys should, when you do post up on Threads, make sure you're putting the screenwriting Threads tag on it because people will just search that and go through for stuff. So,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Oh, that's a good tip. Well, it's not a bad place, roadmapwriters.com. So uh, follow us on socials. We're at Roadmap Writers across all the platforms, even some of the bad ones uh, that we still have to stay on for certain reasons. But yeah, for real, you can follow us at all the platforms. You can continue listening to the Human First podcast on all podcasting platforms and YouTube. And yeah, before we sign off, just another huge thank you to Niceole.
Yes.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Well, I'm glad it turned out well after I made you wait so long.
It was worth the wait.
Yeah,
It
it was
was worth the wait.
amazing.
Yeah.
Just as promised.
Great.
All
Great.
right, and next time we'll talk about breaking in.
Okay.
All right, this is us at Roadmap Writers signing out.